It's rude. I'm just kidding. I've known a few women in the construction industry. Quite a few. I've known a few that stuck around. This is for those women. This is for Pamela Martindale, no matter what I may think now. She worked heavy construction with her husband for years. This goes out to Mary Jepson, who was a tree cutter with her husband for years. We're not talking about riding a bucket truck. We're talking about she climbed that tree. She put on them work boots. She put on that flannel. She put on them trousers. And she went up that tree. She tied things off. She learned what the hell needed to be done. And she learned how to keep her and her family safe. This is for the women in the construction industry, the ones that hold their own. Mary Jepson, let me tell you something. She's got her own opinions, and you know what? Sometimes she keeps her mouth shut. Not because she has to, but because she wants to keep the peace. She understands that sometimes you got to keep the machine running. Sometimes you got to do shit you don't want to do. You know why I never heard her complaining about any of the jobs that she worked at, about them being too physically demanding? She never ever complained in front of me about any job that she worked that was too physically demanding. Her complaints were about coworkers. People that she had to work with were just stupid. No, she didn't like working with idiots. Who would? But she also more often talked about the people she liked. But here's the thing. She was a very direct person. And once in a while, it would be well, you know that stuff that you mumble under your breath like a little bitch? Mary Jepson has said it out loud. Construction. She also grew up in an older generation when cursing wasn't as prevalent. She knows how to curse. She also knows how to make a proper presentation. But I want to tell you something. I've known a lot of women who work construction. They couldn't get a job they could take care of their kids on. McDonald's wasn't working. Or, of course, they had a boyfriend that did drywall. And after doing drywall, and drywall is actually very physically demanding, when you're doing it as a two-man crew instead of having the expensive-ass heavy equipment to do it, yeah, you get yourself some machines that'll literally lay your drywall, line up your drywall, mud it, paper it, everything. You can get some high dollar stuff, but that's not the stuff that you usually get in on, is it? You don't usually start working for a multi-million-dollar company that never has to leave Chicago. Usually you end up with a job doing carpets, or a job having to do that drywall by hand. That goes for all of us, men and women. There's a lot of y'all, female plumbers. Yeah, I've met a female plumber or two. Whenever you have that lady who wants to tell you about how nasty people are, how nasty their job is because they clean toilets. Well, there's the other end of that toilet too. And that job is primarily the end of the shit job where the men have to do it. The men are required. The very physically strenuous labor. Oh yeah, and it's not just wiping up a little bit of brown dried crust that's on there and going, ugh. No, you're running a sewer machine, and when you're pulling it out, it might be flinging dookie. Flinging it. When you got to dig out a sewer main, you're digging a big hole. And that sewer main is probably being dug into because it's clogged up and full of shit. So, yeah, glory be to the women in construction industry and the manual labor industry. When I worked at Labor Ready, right, they had men's jobs and women's jobs. How strange is that? They tried not to send women out on construction jobs because chances were they weren't going to come back for another day of work. There was a lady named Nicole who used to run the Labor Ready on Table Mesa in Boulder, Colorado. And they didn't get a whole lot of women that went through there. Part of the reason is because it was difficult to send women out. Now, there were jobs, there's a lot of jobs like this that are at Labor Ready where it's just a sweeping job, right? And a lot of women, they say, hey, you know what, I was a house cleaner, I was a this, I was a that. But a lot of them won't take a job sweeping at a factory. Now, we're talking about Labor Ready. These aren't permanent jobs. This is only a day, 2, maybe 3. So you get yourself this person who doesn't know what it's going to be, thinking that it's something that it isn't. And literally, it's you using a push broom. At one of the times that we did it outside of Boulder, it was a newspaper printing place. So all we were doing was sweeping up all of the debris and stuff that had fallen out of the machines, making sure that it's not a fire hazard. It's not really all that physically strenuous. If you've never done it before, it'll probably eat you up real quick. Your body will be fatigued because your muscles aren't used to working in that particular direction or the particular motion. But you get used to it. That's one of the things about using your body. A lot of the women that I know, they won't do anything that's physically strenuous at all. Like, sure, they could lift up 25 pounds reasonably. Most of the women that I know could do that. They could get a job working at UPS. They could get a job working at some place like that where, yeah, you might have to lift a little bit of weight. Or maybe even more weight than you're used to. But here's one thing here's what a bricklayer told me. He said, all right, they had a thing with UPS where the drivers were complaining that they shouldn't have to lift anything over 35 pounds because it makes their back hurt. He said, I want you to go move that pallet there by hand. Reinforced concrete block pallets. If you move them one at a time, it's reinforced concrete block. It's not just concrete block. It weighs about 35 pounds or so a block. It's an entire pallet full of those. And yes, when you hear about UPS workers whining, whether it's men or women, about 35 pounds, yeah, a bricklayer and certainly a hod carrier. You know what a hod carrier is? This is your grunt labor for a bricklayer. Everything has to be done on a time. It's got to be done before the mortar sets. Things have to be lined up properly. It has to be the proper mix. There's a lot of stuff, like if it's a hot day or a cold day, you might only get part of the way through your mix before you have to slide it all off because it's gone bad on you. You need to make sure that you aren't having to stop in the middle of a mix to go bring your own block. That's what you got hod carriers for. They bring your cement from the mixer to you, and they bring your block from wherever the truck happened to unload it to where you are. That might include taking off the block 5 or 10 at a time as quickly as possible and putting them onto a pallet or onto a dolly and having to wheel it over to them. Set them off, make sure that you don't tip over the pile, get out of there and get back to them. It's physically strenuous. Now we're talking about men's jobs here, and what I want you to pay attention to is that although most women are not cut out for it, according to them, the fact is that the ones that stick around, it is cut out for them. They are capable. Women are entirely capable of muscle memory. Women are entirely capable of, all right, you know that day that you were sore? All of you guys know that day, your first day of work. You've never tried doing the carpentry thing before. You've hammered a nail a few times here and there on your own projects, but now here you are, you're a journeyman carpenter, you know, you're just starting out. Or an apprentice carpenter. You're just starting out. You're going to do a lot of sawing. What happens at the end of your first day? Your arm feels like it's going to fall off. But what do you got to do? You got to go to work. You got to go to work the next day, and you have to do that again. And the next day, you do it again. And eventually, you can do it all day long, and it doesn't bug you. You can do it all day long. You go home, your muscles are a little bit tired. Hell, some days if you literally have to do it all day long, yeah, it'll still burn you out. But the thing is, because you stuck with it, you got better at it. Because you got better at it, you were with it. Because you were more efficient with it, your muscle memory retained that information and made it easier for your body to perform that task in that manner. Muscle memory. We have taught a lot of women that pain is not something women are supposed to experience. Well, Pamela Martindale knows what that pain is. Most men in construction know what that pain is. There's very few men in construction who don't know what that is, who have never felt it. And those people are what? Bookkeepers. We call them bookkeepers. They're the numbers men, the payroll. And sometimes those aren't men, sometimes those are women. And no, I do not count them as construction workers, although I am glad that many of the boss ladies that we had, like Nicole, could talk shit with the men. I'm also glad that she went out of her way to try to find clients with jobs that women can take, because there were a lot of homeless women that were not on drugs when they first became homeless. They got beaten up by their husband, ended up homeless while he was in jail. When I say things about women, when I'm doing the projecting thing, where I'm projecting onto women, it's not right, is it? It doesn't feel good, does it? It doesn't feel good when you project that stuff onto us either. When we've come to find recently how many men actually are victimized because so many women do engage in false allegations and going around to a man's friends and family and slandering his name because they didn't get what they wanted right when they wanted it. You get to hear from Katie Cahill on my channel, and also from Veronica Bruce, and also from Jamie Curtis. You got to hear them all. When they wanted something, they wanted it instantly and right now. Now, thank goodness, Pamela Martindale has a bit of an idea of what it actually takes what a man actually has to go through because she has experienced a construction site. Same thing with Mary Jepsen. She knows how to give just enough mutual disrespect to somebody to keep them in line. She knows how to control a work environment with men. And she knows how to let you know it's time for you to go directly. She doesn't beat around the bush. At her house, yeah, she talk her own stuff. Same thing with Pamela, I'm sure. But on a construction site, you don't have time for that. When you're in there gossiping with your female friends at an office job, or even your male friends in an office, what are the most dangerous hazards that you have? You might accidentally, improperly keystroke. You might get a splinter off of your artificial veneer top desk. You might spill your coffee. What do you got to worry about at a construction site? Everything. Everything on a construction site will fucking kill you. Nothing on a construction site is properly secured until the job is done. Up until then, there are pieces that have not been nailed in yet, pieces that have not been put in place yet, pieces that have not been cut yet, pieces that have been cut, and of course the cleanup that needs to go on through all of that. Construction sites are dirty, they're filthy, they're nasty. A lot of times you'll be covered in mud, you might literally be covered in shit. When it comes to manual labor jobs, there are women who have done manual labor jobs for years, done an excellent job, and there's a reason for that. It's because they stuck with it. Out of necessity, mostly. But we gotta put good word out there, for not all women are the same. Not all women are too dainty for construction. Not all men are large enough for construction. We can't expect every man out there to be a hod carrier. We also can't expect every man out there to be Channing Tatum. We can't expect every woman out there to be a supermodel either. Just saying. Now, whether you look good or whether you look ugly, whether you're a supermodel or a large woman, if you're working construction, I'm glad you exist. You help to break stereotypes, and you help to make things better for all of us, not just men, not just women. You show that many of the things that we get shoved in our faces daily really just comes down to the fact that how bad do you want it? Are you gonna go home from your cleaning job to your husband who's a plumber and complain to him about how shitty your job is? Or are you going to try to have respect, some mutual respect for your partner? Or at least for the other people that you have to share a planet with? A lot of women that I've known who have gotten construction jobs, I've literally been on the construction site with them, that only lasted a day or two. A lot of times it come down to she didn't want to work anymore So she wanted to pretend that anybody who looked her direction was trying to undress her with their eyes. No, she was out of place. She was doing something dangerous. She wanted to pretend like everything that they said to her was them mansplaining to a retard. No, everybody who is their first day doing a construction job like that, and you've never done construction before, your job is going to be to clean the place. They're not going to hand you a fucking saw. You're not going to know where you're supposed to stand, where you're supposed to be. It's your first day on the job and you need to learn it. You're not going to learn it all in one day. You're not going to learn it all in a week. People who work construction, a lot of them will tell you, hey, I've been working 30, 40 years construction and I still find something new every day. And it's amazing how that happens, isn't it? So when you decide that you're not cut out for it because the first day was rough, or because somebody might have yelled at you, there's power tools. You're gonna get yelled at. Don't fucking cry on a goddamn construction site. Under any circumstances, if you're crying, you cannot see. Your vision is blurred. Also, you are going to attract particulates. You are going to attract things to your eyeballs that you don't want there. Dust, dirt, sawdust. Somebody might be turning on a saw at any point in time, and somebody might be yelling at you because there is impending doom where you are standing. It's not a women are stupid thing. It's not a men are stupid thing. It's a we need to fucking learn thing. We're also taught that we're all supposed to look at it from a woman's perspective. But which woman? We're also all taught that a man isn't supposed to have a perspective when it comes to women. We're supposed to be told what our perspective is. Now here's the great thing about women on a construction site. There's a lot of brain stuff involved and a lot of physical stuff involved. It's also a situation where as long as there is no sexual tension, there's not a problem. Women on a construction site learn not to be flirts. They learn to be direct. The women who stick around learn to be direct. Because if you're flirting, you can get people hurt, you can get them killed. If you're arguing on the job site because you guys had sex last week, somebody will get hurt or killed. You end up doing something stupid, or somebody else does something stupid because you're arguing. Like when my stepdad, ex-stepdad, Michael's dad, his name is Larry Albert, chopped off his fingers. He had a table saw running. He put his hand on his hip and put his hand down while he was arguing with my mom, chopped off his fingers. My mom is not a construction site type of person. She's not a construction type of woman. She's a, I'm a clean toilets and complain about how men are all pigs kind of woman. Anyway, I'm glad you exist. You do make things better for all of us. I know for many of you it's because you had a kid or because you got married to somebody who was broke and you actually are not a superficial piece of shit who thinks that you have to have a Louis Vuitton bag and be a stay-at-home not mother. I want to thank you for participating in equality. I want to thank the women who I have worked with in construction for talking shit to me. For understanding the banter on a job site is to be kept to a minimum because it is important. You do need to pay attention to the measurements. You need to pay attention to what people are yelling at you. And because there could be machinery running at any point in time, and because you might be having to work with people across an open area and need everybody to hear it, yeah, It's probably not going to be done under their breath or quietly. Do not cry on a fucking construction site you can't see when your eyes are teared up. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I've teared up on construction sites, not over how people treated me, not over bullying and words. Nope. Sometimes you step on something, goes into your foot, and it doesn't feel good. Sometimes you come around a corner and you weren't paying enough attention, and you walked right into a 2x4 that you just put there 10 minutes ago, and if you hadn't been trying to step around the corner as you went through, you wouldn't have lodged it at a place and smacked yourself. Sometimes you're trying to remember the numbers of what you just wrote down, but you had to write it down on a piece of cardboard real quick, and you're having to make it through over to where it's needing to go with this proper measurement, because people don't want you to literally stream across. So you got to raise your voice from where you're at and get it to them quickly. You got to make sure that you don't trip on anything. I mean, especially when you're starting to put in flooring and subflooring and a whole bunch of stuff like that, or you're starting to put in the roof trusses. This is an area where, you know, obviously you're not going to be wanting to go down and talk to them. Hey, all right, I'm going to go all the way down and I'm going to talk to the boss or the person who's having to cut these things and send them up to me, or the person who's having to hand the boards up to me. We don't exactly have time to get off the fucking roof to get down and have a conversation inside of the main part where hopefully they're doing the right work. Hopefully they're listening to the measurements properly. But you got to shout it down to them, or you got to shout it up from the basement. You got to shout it in from a window. Yep. And again, like I said, it's going to be physical day in and day out. Just like with McDonald's, those people there may be completely different at home. There may be some of them who are interested in dogs, some of them who are interested in cats, some of them that don't like animals, some of them that wish that they had kids but can't, some of them that have kids but never wanted them. All sorts of different cultures and experiences. Some of them might go home and scream and curse and yell and shout at people, but when they come to work, they smile and say, "Welcome to McDonald's." Appropriate behavior for the workplace. Going onto a job site, realizing you're the only female there and thinking you're the hot shit. Yeah, that doesn't help out anybody on the job site. At that point, you become a distraction. Yes, you are the distraction. It is your fault that you are the distraction. It's not my fault that men are perverts on the job site and only think about sex. Let me explain something to you. You're not there to show off your chesticles. Just as we're not there to accentuate our testicles. There is no room on a construction site for stuffing your underpants with a sock. That is not necessary on a construction site. A padded bra, well, that might be necessary on a construction site. I've been told mammaries are sensitive. I've been told that they're more sensitive for a woman than they are on a man. I wouldn't know. But when you really think about it, as a measure of safety, there might be a reason for wearing a padded bra under a Carhartt, under a work shirt. Not a low-cut V-neck that's meant to accentuate your chesticles. What you're doing there is exactly the same as a cowboy wanting to wear a big old belt to draw or direct your attention to his gonads. I've noticed that most of the construction women that I know dress the same as the construction workers they're working with. Pants, work boots, flannel. They do the same thing at home. If they're wearing a work shirt and it's a t-shirt and it's the summertime, the guys that are there are wearing a shirt too. It's just a t-shirt. It's not some form-fitting thing that you spent $85 on. It's not some mail-order catalog pullover corset thing that you're trying to, all right, look at me, look at me. You're not having the posture of accentuating your chest. Most of the time, you're carrying things, and your posture is for that. If you're not carrying lumber, and you're not carrying tools, you're probably leaning over. Most of your time is spent leaning over. A lot of construction workers make jokes at carpetbaggers or carpet benders. The people who do carpets, because they're on their knees all day, and this is supposed to be some sort of joke. And, it kind of is. It's a guy's world. Men have a mutual disrespect for one another, and that's how we show our respect. But the other thing is, most of the time as a man, most of your construction jobs, you are going to be on your knees at least part of the time. It's just going to happen. When you first start building up a cement wall, or a brick wall, or a block wall, you are on your knees. When you got to get down there and move that street board, when you're making a sidewalk, you are on your knees. When you're pounding in them stakes and making the foundation for that damn thing, and you are setting up the forms, you are on your knees doing that. When you're on a roof, yeah, you're on the tips of your toes and on your knees, and you got knee pads for a reason. It ain't just them carpetbaggers or carpet benders. I'm not going to use the other terms because they're not appropriate. We're trying to keep it clean. When it comes to being on a job site, yeah, maybe she is still a woman. She still wants to be pretty. She still wants to go on dates. She still wants to pretty herself up once in a while to go out on a Saturday night. Hire a babysitter or have mom watch the kids for a few hours. Of course, who wouldn't? Grandma's always wondering why you don't bring over the kids. Or, I guess that depends on the grandma. But when they come to work, they dress appropriately for the job. They don't come to work dressing like a slutty schoolgirl to do construction. They don't show up in little tiny little tiny black shoes that are all super shiny to a mirror finish with bows on them to a fucking construction site. Kind of like if you're a stripper, you're probably not going to go up there covered in a plumber's work clothes. You dress for success. I want to thank those of you who broke out of the men owe me feminism crap and joined the workforce the way that we have to do it, and try to understand us and our point of view. And I want you to understand that when I say that I think that women should not be allowed on the job site, I completely disagree with that. I think women like you absolutely belong there. And I believe that the rest of these women if they hadn't been taught to be so mentally weak, hadn't been handed so much in their lifetimes and taught that it's owed to them. But you know, for most of you, it was a matter of adversity. A matter of you had to. You had to stick it out. Yes, your muscles hurt, especially the first and second and third day. At the end of your first week, you wanted to quit. By the end of your second week, though, weren't you fitting in? Weren't things going good? And how many jokes and innuendos do you bring to the job site? All sorts of them. How many construction women can tell you the dirtiest jokes, both men's and women's jokes out there? Now, are we telling those jokes while we're working? Fuck no, you save that shit for lunchtime. Some of the dirtiest jokes I know came from women. Some of the most tasteless jokes about people in wheelchairs that I know came from Jeff Baldridge. For the women on the job site who don't create sexual tension and don't make it a look at me thing, I want to thank you so much. I want to thank you for sticking around and showing that women can do it. And that when we hear women bitching that they can't do it, you are living proof that they can. They just don't want to. They, not you. How many women who got into construction fields later on spoke about how rewarding it is? Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of women out there who have gotten sexual stuff against their bosses who own big companies. And of course, we all know that you can do something like that if you want to be able to dip out and not have people think the less of you. But the thing is, we're not all the same. And there are different traits and different people that we can all find admirable. You just got to look for them. You know, you may think that whole look at me Pomeranian thing is how you should be. Just remember that if you keep doing that, keep getting drunk and dressing for success to be picked up on by somebody who's attracted to children, you might end up in a scenario later on where you literally have to protect your children from that man, where you have to go testify against that man in court because he touched your children. And after he's put away, you're going to have to find some way to take care of them kids. And you might find that the bills for the house that's over your head is going to require you to get a job doing construction for shit wages. Because those shit wages can turn into true advancement at some point. Some of y'all might have picked up construction jobs because you found out you might be earning more money because you're working 12 to 14-hour days. You understand what a man has to go through for taking care of the health care for his children. You understand a lot of the things that he has to do, the sacrifices that he has to make every day at work for the kids that he loves. You get to see that firsthand. You get to find out what men are really like. But only if you stick around. I want to say thank you one more time to all of the women who work construction, whether that be plumbing or even just digging ditches. Thank you very much for fighting for your rights. Because at that point, you're fighting for your right to exist. You're fighting for your right to be respected, and you realize very quickly that the easiest way to be respected is to not to expect. A lot of people come onto a job site, especially a lot of women, come onto a job site expecting a bunch of whoops and whistles and cat calls. No, if there's whoops and whistles on the job site with your coworkers, well, yes, men will cat call other male people who work with them as a joke, because it's entertaining, just razzing them. Now, when it is a whole job site doing that to one person, well, that's when it's one of those situations somebody, and that's rude, that's mean, that's inconsiderate. They'll do it to a man same as they'll do it to a woman. If you're just plain dumb and you don't fit in, they will. Well, just like working in a situation where you're working with women. It's difficult to get a job working with women when it's a woman owner and a woman industry, like cleaning. Cleaning is kind of like being a construction worker, but you're cleaning a lot less things. You're getting a lot less dirty. When you sweep a construction site, you're sweeping up a lot. You're sweeping up chunks of wood. Sometimes chunks of rocks and bricks. When you lift up that dustpan, you know you've lifted something. So, what is there bad to say about women in construction? Depends on the woman. If there's a woman on a construction site and all of the guys are razzing her the first day, they do that to everybody their first day. It's construction. When it gets excessive and overboard, well, that's when they're targeting you. And you're not going to be able to tell that it's excessive or overboard on the first day. When somebody's yelling at you on your first day, do not freeze and fucking cry. That is not a proper response. You're working on a construction site, someone's bringing in trusses. You got a guy yelling at you saying, hey, there's trusses coming in. Hey, there's trusses coming in. They can't see you from the cab. You need to move. You hear the beep, 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 beep. You hear the and the I mean, you got machines going. The last thing you need to do is freeze. The last thing that is intelligent to do is freeze. Why do we keep teaching women and girls that the job for them to do in a situation like that is to wait for someone to rescue them? Or expect someone to rescue them? Now there's a big difference between that and things happen on a job site. They just do. There are accidents that are going to happen. When you've been on a construction site, you are less likely to completely fucking flip out when somebody slices their finger wide open. Your first month in construction, you might see a little bit of blood. No biggie. If you can get over it, it's fine. After 5 years in construction, you are probably doing the same thing that the other guys are doing, which is, well, you sliced it open for sure. It's bleeding like a stuck pig. Go fucking rinse it off, grab the super glue, and call it good. Super glue. 2 stripes on the inside of that finger too. You can barely see it. Super glue. Equality is what you make of it. What you're born with is what you have to work with genetically. Whether or not you get along with others does come down partially to you, but also partially to them. There are situations that you are not going to be able to magic your way out of by pouting and crying and doing all of this. A big-ass pallet that is getting ready to fall over because somebody was stupid with a forklift. And it's going to fall on your head and someone screams at you, "Move!" That means right fucking now. Not, "Oh, why is he yelling at me?" Oh. Not mansplaining, it's preventing you from getting crushed. Alright, it's 8:55. I only had to bitch at this thing long enough for the library to be open. I'm hoping they're open now. I try to get some stuff done while I'm in there best I can. The phone calls I need to make, I really need to have somebody there to make them with me, but when you have to do something, you have to do it. When it's necessary, it's necessary. When I have to go to the cops by myself because I don't have anybody that I can call when something happens, I still got to try to do something about it to protect myself and my loved ones, whether the cops will hear it or not. That works. We're good to go. I'm going to go to the grocery outlet bargain market, get myself something to eat. Oh, wait. I think I might actually go over to the Chevron and get a hot coffee first, because they don't have that at the grocery outlet. I want to say thank you also to the women who can change their own tire, to the women who pump their own gas. I want to thank you to all of the women out there who try to actually practice and show equality instead of wanting to play on gender roles only when it suits you. I want to thank you for understanding that just as it is not your job to cook for me, it is not my job to change the tire for you. And just as if you choose to cook for me, you are doing so out of kindness. When I choose to help change a tire, I'm doing so out of kindness, but also the difference there is that I know how to cook. I don't require you to cook, and I don't depend on you to cook. I do depend on the people here at the Chevron to cook. Their food is hot. Their coffee is warm. But I didn't ask them to do that or expect them to do that, except for the fact that it is a service that they provide and I am aware of. Whereas you really should know how to change your own goddamn tire.